Hello and welcome to another Artis Opus video. We've got a challenge here. It's the world's largest tadpole. No, it is a Mawcrusher from the Orruk Warclans. We are going to try and salvage this model a little. I didn't build it. It's not built to the normal standard that I'd like to build it to. I might also need to rip it apart for painting ease. So yeah, this video is going to be halfway between a challenge, seeing if we can rescue this guy a little bit. Don't even know if he's got a rider. We'll try and dig that out. And then the other half of it is going to be using Citadel's new contrast paints, which have been out for a little while. There's plenty of great videos out there on them. I've not used any of them, and I'm really interested to see how they go with this. This seems like an amazing opportunity. We're going to get him looking as awesome as possible, as fast as possible. So it'll be halfway between a tutorial and a challenge. And by the end of it, hopefully we have something that looks great, because this Grumpy Cabbage is pretty much one of my favorite models Games Workshop have made in recent years. So let's jump in. All right, so before we do anything, what state is this model in? Got some pretty chubby glue joins. It's covered in dust. I don't know if this will show up on camera. It's very dusty. I can see little particles rising up underneath my light now. Pretty bad, so we'll definitely be giving it a dust. I'll see if I can sand some of these joins. The most problematic ones are on upward facing sides because it's the top of the model, so we're gonna see them more easily. They're not too bad underneath, so we'll ignore them. We're trying to do a fast job after all. But right down the middle here, there is a gap that runs between the two sides of the model. So I might see if I can do a little bit of overgluing and sanding there. We'll have to leave that to dry before we sand it, then we'll sand it, and then we'll have a model that we can kind of rock on with. So yeah, time to give him a little bit of TLC. I'll be using plenty of sanding sponge. This is amazing, just an absolute lifesaver. I use this constantly. And we'll see if we can buff him up and polish him a little. I imagine this will take about 20 or 30 minutes, something like that. Okay, so we've done a little bit of sanding and scraping yesterday, but most importantly, we've overglued a few joints right here up the spine in order to be able to sand them down once they've dried, or scrape them down. Either is fine. So between my knife, you could use a Citadel scraping tool as well. They're pretty good for this. And the sandpaper, we should be able to get into all of these zones, hopefully, and just make that little annoying, obvious join less noticeable. It's kind of like camouflage. You just got to break that unbroken, very obvious line all the way down in a couple of places. We're trying to go a little bit fast though, so I'm just going to try and make it so it's slightly less obvious. And at the point that I'm happy with it, we're ready for beginning our painting. Okay, so our model's had a Chaos Black undercoat. What I'm going to do at this point is give it a overspray from above with GW's new white. So this is what they recommend you use the contrast paints over. Apparently it's much improved. Fingers crossed on that, because the last one was a catastrophe. Yeah, I guess baptism of fire. I'll make sure I follow all of the steps. It's warm, it's shaken, it's not a humid day, that type of stuff. You know, the outdoor environment isn't volatile. I'll follow all the steps and we'll try and get the best result we can. So I will report back soon, and fingers crossed. Wow, that is an improvement. That is an incredible improvement. Obviously the bar was low as it gets, but by white spray standards, super impressive. Basically, to kind of let me pick up a thing and pretend it's a spray can. This is my spray can. So I've gone from above numerous times, and then what I've done is I've gone from 45 degrees, traveling down the model, like this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle, all the way to the bottom, but still at 45 degrees. And what I'm hoping to do is achieve this kind of natural effect where the bottom is dark or black and the top is white, and then we get a nice kind of fade between those colors in the middle that makes him look so like he's been lit nicely. And give it a quick whisk over. You can see I've been holding it by this bit here. Give him a quick whisk over to make sure the areas on top are completely white. But yeah, I'm pretty impressed with that. You need to make sure you don't miss areas like the inside of the wings as well. They would still be hit by the light. It's just we tend to spray from outside in rather than from inside out. It is a far, far improved product. Really impressed, that's great. I've done quite a few steps here to try and make sure that it's definitely completely white on top. See, I tried to catch the tail a bit more there. I'm not willing to do any more than this, because even if it is far improved, there is still a likelihood that it could build up to things being a little bit too matte and absorbent after stages or get fluffy, so I'm okay with how it is. Always got to draw a line somewhere. Pretty much white all over apart from the lower parts, but I'm absolutely fine with that, so now I can get on with the fun bits. Now I don't see this paint come out too much for pre-shading purposes, because it is really, really strong. It is, of course, Bold Titanium White from ProAcryl. However, because we've put down a pretty decent coverage white here, we need something that is going to stand out. Now I'm using Series D, of course, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be giving this, I'll remove quite a lot, but I'm using this to soften the transition between the white and the black here. And what I mean by that, if we take this wing for an example, test it's not too heavy first, keeping my stroke top to bottom. In general, I'm going to pass it down the model, and what this is going to do is going to make sure that the bits that stick out still get some coverage from the white stuff. You can go side to side if you want to hit specific areas, but what we'll do is we'll keep that nice fade in the shadows at the very least, but the bits that are sticking out are going to get hit by this stage of dry brushing, and that's going to give us a lot of much more natural, subtle, and pretty fancy looking shading actually, considering that it's only a 3-step process. If we look at him here, if I take a vanilla one, I'll be able to demonstrate a bit more what I mean. It doesn't jump out at you, it just looks kind of right, which is a really good indication that you're going in the right direction. So I'll do that all over, paying special attention to the bits on the undersides. I'll show you in one more. So we'll hit the wrinkles around here for a little bit more of a subtle effect. So removing a little of the excess, and then these wrinkles here, even on the underside, I want those to have been picked out. See, there you go. So they wouldn't be hit by the stage that we did with the spray can, so it's very important that we give them a little bit of TLC now. Go all over the belly as well if you want. And what we're going to do is just make sure that the bits that stick out get noticed a little bit more. It's up to you whether you want to do this or not. I think it's worth doing, or maybe you could just do it on the outward facing areas if you can't be bothered to catch it in the insides. But regardless, I love it. It's a magical step. Let's move on to the colors. Got to be honest here, I'm going to get pretty lazy. So I've taken a look at the model from the side profile. So areas like the chest here, that's definitely poking through. You can see I've hit that with some, all right quality dry brushing. It is going to be fairly shaded, so I'm not being obsessive. Bits like this though, it's right underneath. When a model is like that on a base, there is not a chance of that getting seen. So yeah, I'm casting a fairly well-experienced eye over this and trying to clock areas that are going to stand out badly. Maybe you could say that calf would, but I don't think this stuff is too much of a big issue. At this point, pretty much done. Areas like this, though, have been thoroughly worth it. You can see that beautiful effect of those wrinkles or veins or whatever they are. They've been picked out because they're raised. They would have been black. So we've got multiple levels of texture-based shading going on this. It's already looking good. If you wanted to do an albino dragon, if you wash this with the appropriate kind of soft gray, you could have something that looked incredible really quick. But I think we're going to go a bit more colourful than that though. Before that, let me know. So I am completely on the fence here. Would you pull the arms off this for the contrast stage and the following stages and then reattach them or not? I kind of feel like my access is going to be really limited. Yeah, pause the video and let me know now. I'm genuinely interested to see which way the public's vote goes on this, because they are some really obstructive wings. They're going to get in the way for contrast quite a lot and dry brushing a huge amount. I think I'm going to pull them off, but yeah, let me know what you would do or what you did do if you have painted a grumpy cabbage. I've actually got the timer ready. We're going to see how long it takes us to get the cabbage to a pretty tasty state. All right, nowhere to hide. We are on the clock. Let's go. Using a big beefy brush, I don't see why you'd be using a smaller brush than this. In fact, really I should be using a 6. This is my poor abused brush though that gets used for shades and this type of work. So just going to pop a little bit of medium in that once I've tested how it looks over scales thin. And what we're looking to do here is just create some areas of additional interest and depth in certain sections of the model. So I'm going to whack it down. It's a shame that we're hitting the horns really, but we can't do much about that. And then, just to really upset people, we're going to go straight into some Lamy medium. Sorry guys, I know you don't like me doing this. And we'll use that to fade it out a little bit. That's it. So we're going to whisk round any areas as default next to scales. I've got my little reference on my stand here on the phone, so I'll use that as well. Maybe I'll get the army book out, but they are a bit big and cumbersome on tables. I think at this point, there we go. Much more helpful. Maybe I don't even need to fade it. Maybe I could just, screw it, we're going fast. Let's let's see if this screws my model up. It shouldn't do though. And the other thing that I'm going to do is towards the bottom, I'm also going to darken it. It's up to you. Take a look at nature. I looked at some pictures of fish when I went for coffee. I know that sounds weird, but they're a great reference. Fish, sharks, tropical frogs, that type of stuff. They're all a interesting way to look at, animal markings. Google is your friend with this stuff. Down here, where no one's really going to see, I don't think we have to worry too much about being delicate. So how do these look on normal cabbage? The spines have been picked out in a contrasting color. I want to avoid doing that if at all possible. Anything like blocking in, it really, really adds to time. Yeah, I reckon we will get away with that. Hopefully we do. If we don't, I'll be really sad because I actually love this model quite a lot, even if I didn't build it. Always good when you've got completely mirrored pieces to use them as references for each other. Need to be a little bit careful of pooling. I don't want it too thick. I'm going to try and fade it out a little bit, so after putting the big blocks down, I'll break up their contours. So we've given a little bit of a hairdry, hopefully we're okay. Taking me a little bit longer than I thought to get that stuff down, but I did, I was going pretty slapdash, but I didn't want to do anything that I regretted, so it's worth taking a little bit longer over. I think overall, effect-wise, this should work out pretty well. Hopefully it's not too unsubtle once we put the yellow down over it. It could go either way. I guess we'll find out. Something of note, I'm pretty sure that takes longer to dry than it used to. Don't know if you guys have found anything similar. That could be more working time, easier to work with in terms of washes and mixing and stuff like that. But yeah, felt a bit slower. Anyway, I've changed my water. We're on 23 minutes so far of painting time, and it's time to get out the big boys. So I'm not going to go for this one. I'm going to go for this one. I think actually this feels a little bit more kind of creamy and egg yolky and orky. So Imperial Fist it is. Admin can go over here. Now let's do a quick test to see how it looks over the purple somewhere, or the crimson somewhere. Gonna use it neat. And this is over purple, over black. So it might look a little bit weird in these areas. Screw it, I'm probably just gonna end up painting an entire section, aren't I? Yes, I am. Let's go for it. Well, it obviously looks brilliant over white. Looks absolutely great. Is noticeably darker over the black sections, unsurprisingly. But to make sure I cover all the purple sections, we do want them to be purpley yellow, not purple purple. I think even if that looks a little bit rough like that, as a whole, it's gonna look okay. Oh, I mean, fingers crossed, I hope it does. Right, that's it. I'm gonna slap that down all over. I won't dilute it. I'm gonna make sure to not let it pool overly. Aside from that, that's the only really thing I'm gonna take care with. That is important though, it's really, really important. Don't let it pool more than you want to. This already feels like it's drying faster than the shade by quite a long way. I have hair dried this so it's warm, maybe it's that, but let's whack on another time lapse and basically get our model like half finished in one step. So we've made some fantastic progress there. Hopefully you guys agree with me. As predicted, this has kind of worked the moment we've gone all over. Now, a few areas I've obscured it more than others, or I've done it softer. This was the first bit I did with a crimson pre-wash, a bit delicate with it. Now, I've been working away in the background. You can see I've got my little stand here with this all the time. This is the reference I've chosen to use. It's easier to work from a black and white one, so it's actually been really useful. But I quite like the fact that the cracks are really viewable here. And because we just went from a flat white base, we've lost a little bit of that depth. So I'd like to put the cracks back in. I'm gonna make a custom wash to do that. If you want, you could skip this, or actually when it's been sprayed white, you could give it a quick Nuln oil wash all over or something like that. Nuln's quite weak and heads for recesses where it shades them and it doesn't do too much to the raised area. So you could spray it with a white, Nuln oil all over, quick dry brush, that'll pick up the raised areas. And that would be a really nice way to keep this. I think that would probably be my preference. We're going to make this work though. We're going to use it as a way to inject a little bit of color. So what I'm going to do, again, I've just had that reference there all the time. It's really useful for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix together the new Seraphim Sepia, the new Carroburg Crimson. This is quite soft, this is quite strong, so this will soften it up whilst keeping things warm, and the model is very warm, we want to keep that. And then we're just going to slap in a little bit of medium or water if needed, and this will get washed pretty much all over. I'll make it up now. You guys can see the ratio. I don't really care too much about ratios generally, but I get that people want to know exactly what we're doing if they're following. So 2 parts sepia to start, probably. 1, 2. I've always loved these colors. The sepias have been a real big love of mine. That's probably 3 parts actually after cleaning the brush out. Half. Yeah, we're good. Horrible. Looks like weak blood. Wonderful. So let's see if it looks as good on the model as it does in our little metal palette. I don't want something that's going to overpower the yellow, but I do want something that's going to pull nicely in the cracks and just make the scales stand out and make them look a bit more 3-dimensional. The yellow in the cracks here, not sure if you can tell. Some of it's dried. I could have been a bit thinner, but it dries and it just looks a bit too light. That's the thing that I'm looking to fix. So this should be the type of mix where we just don't have to worry about subtlety whatsoever. And we go all over. Of note, by the way, like areas like this where I've been really brave and jagged with the markings underneath, I think they've by far been the most successful. So again, not ever rewarded for subtlety with this stuff, it seems. Shouldn't have worried about it whatsoever. Okay, we'll whisk this all over the purple sections, see how that makes our guy look, and hopefully that does a really good job of making the scales look that little bit more obvious. Well, I think it's safe to say that's one of my better ideas. Don't know if this is coming across on camera, but that is just a world of difference. Look at this section here. Really added so much depth to it. Made the most of the gorgeous texture on the model. So much happier. Night and day difference there for me. I think in real life in particular, this one looks loads better. Be careful because you're putting a darkish wash or a very light section. Don't go tipping the model around at different angles while you do this process, because you'll end up with the wash drifting downwards. Then when you change the angle, the place that's down is going to change and you end up confusing your wash and dripping it in multiple directions. Try and keep it the same orientation. You'll often see me lifting my model up to try and get to underneath without changing or altering that angle. So yeah, really glad that we've taken the time to do this step. That mix is awesome over that color, and this guy's really going to benefit from it. From the beginning, the stuff that we're worried about being subtle or not, it just doesn't matter. Do not worry about it. Like, we've done 2 steps over it, they're not even opaque, and they've kind of hidden a load of mistakes, and the model's looking pretty badass at this point. So yeah, just rock on and have fun with it. Yeah, that's it. We'll wash all over and come back and have a look at him, and then we'll think if there's any other steps that we want to take. So unfortunately, we just hit base coating. It's easy. It doesn't take too long. It is boring as hell though, so nothing we can do about that. We'll just sit down and slug through it. So let's do some base coating. Oh God, so this went to 100 and then started again, or I started it again. Base coating neatly takes a long time. I made a couple of mistakes here. I should have used a heavy body coverage paint for the spines, because I'm trying to get a decent ivory color down there. I actually ended up mixing in a bit of our previously used Bad Boy. If you want coverage, one of the best out there and a brilliant additive if you're looking for something bright. It's a little bit matte and it's easier to rub off. It doesn't have quite the durability of a satin paint, so I knocked it off a few times with my thumb while I was rushing. I might even put a varnish down. And then for the silver bits, super easy. Play Game Air Silver, tiny bit of black in there if you want, but it's up to you how dark you want to go. And actually for the straps, I've just gone for a neutralish grey that isn't a cold one. Gone for Celestra, which I always think sounds cold, but it's not cold grey. The reason for doing that is I'm just going to hit these with some type of leathery wash, and I haven't made my mind up yet. So a mid grey is not a bad idea. I'm going to whisk around now and catch a few bits that I've realised I've missed with the yellow. And we're also going to get out the dry brush before we do anything else, because I want to upgrade this yellow a little bit and make it pop just that little bit more. Super easy. We can do that by using a little bit of flash kits, and we'll add something light into it, and then we'll just hit it from above with dry brushing. Anyway, enough waffling. Let's jump in and start doing some of the actual exciting stuff, because I was beginning to tear my hair out. Like, that's a lot of time for someone who's got a short attention span. This dry brushing is going to be super, super easy. You can use any light color. I've got ivory from Vallejo. Here you could use Screaming Skull if you wanted. Don't use something like Xandri Dust or Morghast Bone. They're both bases. They're a bit heavy. Here's Screaming Skull for comparison. They're a bit heavy in terms of coverage, and also they're not quite light enough. We don't want to be dulling this yellow down too much at all. If you pop 2 lines on the palette, you know the deal. Not the first time we've dry brushed on this channel. Dampening pad out. Right, big brush, unsurprisingly. It's a big model, and here we're going to reap the benefits of still having not attached those wings for sure. Okay, so this is the one that I have done, I think. Yeah, it's the one I have done. So the section that I've done is here. It's a little bit too subtle, so we're going to start there and we're going to beef it up a bit. A little bit of the yellow, pull it together with the ivory. So it's looking fairly subtle, and then we're going to drag it from above. So this is going to hit upwards facing edges. Maybe there's a little bit too much of the ivory in there. You want to lean it more towards the yellow. It is doing work though. And what it's also going to do is anywhere that's got some slightly iffy washes or wasn't that neat, the areas that stick out are going to pull attention more, so we're hiding our mistakes. So even if you don't see it making, a hugely noticeable difference, start that. So I'm doing proper painting. Even if you don't see it making like a massively noticeable difference, I do think it's worth doing. Fast too. This isn't arduous base coating. It makes you want to tear your hair out. This is quick and fun because you're using a massive brush and texture. So all the strokes from the top to the bottom. Hopefully you can see what it's doing for this wing here. And then if we want, can go side to side on some sections. So areas like this, it was a bit of an iffy section. With some repetition, actually even stiffer section until it gets kind of lighter. If it's ended up too dark, which I feel that section might have. So you can tweak it to your heart's content. And you could take this really bright if you wanted, or really light. Entirely up to you how subtle or not you want to be. Just to show on the scales. It's not a particularly different application, but probably useful for me to show it. I'm gonna be careful not to get it on the white. That's the only bit I do care about. If it gets on straps or anything, I'm kind of okay with it. But we're just going for a little light brush. Not much pressure. Pick out the raised areas, and you'll be able to affect where it goes and how really easily with angle. If you definitely want it to hit some sections, push it against them. So if you've got lines running this way. So I'm going to show here on the face. One of the things this will do is it's going to tie areas together that don't necessarily have a unifying part to them. So if you've got, it's really dark here, it's lighter there. Putting one line down the middle that connects those parts really is going to do quite a lot to tie things together. So especially on the face, I'll take a little bit more time. Still using a massive brush, of course, but I'm going to make sure that all of it is pulled together in that way. Right, it is 100% safe to say that I've got to the messy finishing stages of a project. I'm really ready to be done with this now, so how are we going to get it over the finish line? What we're going to do is we're going to use basically just a bunch of the new paints. So, new non-oil, 1 part, make sure that's got no dust in it. 2 parts, 3 parts, and then we're going to go for a little bit of the crimson. just a tad. 1. I'll test it like this, but my assumption is that I'm going to end up putting some sepia in this, so test it somewhere. Can always tint it. It's quite nice, actually. Very importantly, I want it to pull at the bottom of each horn in a particular manner, because what I'm trying to do is get away with the fact that we've got some pretty wobbly joins between these horns and the yellow sections of the armor. I want to hide that mess underneath the wash. I reckon actually that's fine, kind of staying cool without the sepia in it. We're good to rock on. That's 2 to 1. We could soften it with some medium, but the Nuln Oil is quite soft anyway. I think people are always surprised about this. Just because black's a strong color, it doesn't mean that black paints are strong paints. So I'm finishing my strokes towards the bottom of the horns. I'm just kind of pushing it into it. And what we should get then, we might get too much, as we have done here, look at that great big blob, fixed, is pulling towards the bottom of the horns. It looks quite nice and natural. But I'll show you on a couple of these, on a large one just to demonstrate it. So taking the stroke from the top to the bottom, I actually take a little bit off the brush. There we go, that's better. And then what I'm doing is I just want it to pull in the bottom where we've got that nice natural sculpted recess between the two. And I'm putting it there, I'm leaving it there at the end of my stroke. I want that to help fade the horn into its surrounding area. And that'll get rid of any of the, less neat bits of our painting with the white. There you go, so it's that. Overall the horns should actually be pretty fast and fairly enjoyable, because this is the kind of the home straight as far as the monster goes, pretty much. Well, I just tried both of these out and they're like really, really strong inks. They're not getting used. I didn't enjoy that. Just to show you, kind of did them in like a hidden bit here on some strapping. They're just like really strong old school inks. So there's a use for them. It's not using light contrast though, in my opinion. So that's a bit weird. Don't know if you guys have had similar experiences if you tried them or if you found a good application for them. I think we'll just go classic here. Maybe I'll mix some Scrag Brown in with sepia or something like that. Let's give it a go. Really surprised by those paints. Scrag, the old favourite. Just feel like I should have painted these dark brown. I was expecting those contrasts to go a little bit better than they did, that's for sure. Yeah, that'll be fine. I'll just get these down in kind of a generic leather, and then I'll put a layer of sepia over the top of it, and that'll be fine. Dot the rivets, and then we can jump onto the metallics. Okay, so we hit our timer, just about to put the wash down, and then we'll get onto the metallics. So like I said, it's just repeating a Seraphim sepia wash over our Scrag and sepia kind of custom contrast that we made. The Scrag and sepia contrast mix is probably 2 or 3 Scrag to 1 sepia, just putting a little bit in there. And we're putting this on now just to pull in the recesses and make it look a little bit more deep and leathery hued. Once we've done this step, we can dot the rivets that are in there for no reason. They tend to appear in this type of stuff. There you go, easy, just add a little bit of depth to them. All right guys, so I've actually got to a little realization point with the Mini. I didn't quite like the finish of it, so I'm going to varnish it. I'm going to use Storm Shield, Citadel's matte varnish. This thing actually, in my opinion, brushed on neat is by far the easiest way to use it. There's no dilution or anything, and I think that pretty much gets you the best result. So hopefully this shows it on camera adequately. This one's been matte varnished. You can see it's all got that kind of same flat, semi-soft, consistent finish. This one hasn't, and because we've used washes and we've used contrast and we've used different paints and different brands all over it, this one looks a bit more inconsistent, and this one looks way more consistent, which I like visually. I'm going to do the metallics again. I'm doing this now before I do the metallics because I want the metallics shiny. They're slightly shiny, but it has been dulled. Maybe you can see the difference between this one not varnished and this one varnished. Anyway, I'll quickly show you now just how easy it is to varnish. Just varnished his head as well. So I've done somewhere important on the model. If it looks good enough on the head, it's fine for elsewhere. So neat, out the pot. nothing techie with this technical, and then we brush it on. Now I put it in one area and then I try and take from that area as far as I possibly can over the rest of the model. So I'm really thinning it down a lot. Nowhere's getting drenched. We're not pooling it in any recesses. I am taking that as far as it will go. This will also decrease the drying time, which it takes quite a long time to dry. Now, if you do have an airbrush, like I said, I think brush application is the best, but if you do have an airbrush, it does airbrush on fine. Let me show you that. I just dilute it with water. I wouldn't mix anything else in, because what you get if you mix something else in, like a typical airbrush thinner, is you actually end up making it slightly more shiny as a result. So this is just diluted with water, probably 2 to 1, varnish to water as the thinner. Now obviously that's pretty fast, but like I said, I think the brush on result is better. So I'm just going to use a big brush and kind of carefully go over everything. This is going to add to our timer. Our timer is, we've hit 200 minutes now. So it's taken a lot longer than I thought from the first stages. I've already thought of a lot of ways to speed this up in the future. Anyway, quick varnish, then the metallics, then we're pretty good. Make sure to get the spines as well. If you don't hit them, they're going to stand out as shiny, which, unless you want to leave as kind of a uniform effect of them being shiny, won't look good. It'll look out of place. I should be using a bigger brush. What am I doing? Okay, so we finally got there to the metallics. Realize I've been saying it there. Close for a bit now. I wanted to take the opportunity here to show you one of my favorite techniques, which is the easiest possible way to do metallics, in my opinion, and get a decent result and a decent kind of concept of age and depth to them really fast. So all you do is use washes neat. So you can mix them if you want. It doesn't really matter. I tend to start off with a couple of steps of sepia. Then I just do non-oil until I'm happy with it. You can mix them to your heart's content. It's up to you. I would always finish with the more black ones, because the brown being pushed into the depths in the first stages has quite a nice effect and makes them look a little bit older without having them look, tarnished too much. So to show how that is, we start off like this. 2 washes of sepia with a bit of black in it later. This, that's already a really solid effect. You don't want it to pull too much. I had it pull a little bit there. And then by the end of it, you end up with this, which is a really old, deep, haggard looking metal. And you can dry brush that, you could chip the edges, you could scrape it. Looks brilliant. Because it's a wash, this has also gone shiny. So I've got a matte model now. I've got shiny metallics, which is perfect. I've also used the same wash on the straps. And for the same reasons it works there on the metal as a filter, it's worked really nicely on the straps, which now have a bit of shine to them. You can see the light working really nicely there. And because it's not opaque, it's just added a bit of depth and makes them look really quite nice and leather-like. Sepia. Oh, everyone's waiting for it. Contamination time. Okay, there we go. We're very precise technical painters here, guys. So slap it down. I do mean slap it down. The first stage is the most important, because the surface will be more shiny and slippery with that metallic only on it before you've got the wash down at all. So popped it all over. Don't forget front and back. And I take it to the edge as well. This is going to kind of black line the feature here, which will separate it from the scales, which is very practical and useful anyway. At this stage, when it's had some time to run down, I'll mop it up from the bottom. You can just redistribute it however you like. You can dot it into these areas here if you want anywhere to be darker than it is. So that's not too much. I'm okay with that. Go to the back and do the same. That's it. While I'm here, just to show you how much easier it goes down over itself, which all paints do, we can slap it down on this section and you can see that awesome, see that awesome depth that we're looking to add there. Perfect, grimy, orky and disgusting. And it's already drying out. That's because it's not going over a gloss, it's going over the wash. Okay, now some very careful finishing dry brushing. Take the same silver that we've used already. It's below Gamer Silver. And we're just gonna let these sections highlight themselves for us. You could use scrapes or suggest chips on the edge of it and it'd look absolutely great too. I'm going for this kind of buffing though. And that's all we're going to do. It's going to remove some of the excess. I'm going to work with the model. It's going to go against those edges gently from whatever angle we want, and then the bits that are sticking out, we're just going to let the model highlight itself. Amazing. That looks really great. They do a lot at the front of this model to kind of set it off and give some real contrast to the bright yellow. So yeah, he's basically done. We're done. Success. Definite success. Contrasts, as far as, you know, this is a testing exercise, they're all over the place. I cannot draw a conclusion about the lot. The yellow is phenomenal. The spray, the white, is the best white spray by far GW have ever had. And the washes, they behaved really, really well. They're soft. They're pretty soft. That's worth noting. They take longer to dry. I'm certain of that. Let me know if you think otherwise or if you agree. And then something else I've noticed 100% is that in their working time, what happens with them is as you get down to the last bits, let's say down to the last quarter, add this with the sepia, because of evaporation, that last quarter is going to be thicker. So I think they're more volatile. So maybe just, you know, be good with popping your lids closed while you're using them and stuff like that. Really enjoyed it. I won't be using the ones that behave like inks unless I need something that behaves like an ink, in which case I'll use an ink. So they're a bit weird, but I'm really excited to try out anything else that's going to perform like that yellow. This was a blast. Might have 2 more cabbages assembled somewhere. So, you know, maybe I could paint more cabbages. Anyway, let me know what you thought of the tutorial. We went pretty in depth on the, you know, a couple of sections, but this should be everything you need to paint scales, not just in yellow, but in any other color. So think about it this way. You do the shade all over with, you know, like, I think a dark gray is better than the black. Then you take the white, pretty much all of it from above, contrast down over a little quick white dry brush to pick out the raised areas the most you can with a strong white. We use Bold Titanium from Monument. It's the best for doing that type of stuff by a long way, super strong. Put your contrast all over. As you do, don't let it pull. And then the important bit, the really important bit, have a look at your contrast and then make a shade mix to put all over everything. Soften it if it's too strong, and that'll go into the recesses, and then you'll keep your wrinkles. It's all about keeping your wrinkles. So all these sections here, you know, they would look so much worse if we hadn't preserved the detail that's been sculpted pretty beautifully, actually. Phenomenal model onto this model. So that's the sequence. You can paint everything highly textured in the world like that very fast. The only time you're going to slow down is when you come to like teeth, swords, or whatever. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. We have an army of these guys. There'll be some content on that once we finish the Nurgle army. I bashed them out in about 10 days. So that's coming up probably next. Have a little think about it. All comments, suggestions, criticisms, thoughts on the new contrast, pop them below, and anything useful we'll put in the pin sticky. Thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.